Keith Pompey for the Inquirer, he tweeted this out just a little while ago. The Sixers, Christmas Day, they beat the Bucks. Since then, Milwaukee has won 16 of 18, and Philly's 8 of 10, lost 8 of 10. Or no, are 8 and 10. Excuse me. And he's going to join us here to talk a little bit about it. He had his Locked On Sixers podcast that asked the question, what's wrong with this team? Well, he was at practice today, and it sounded, Keith, that a lot of people were asking these very questions to Brett Brown, Joel Embiid. Hey, what's wrong with you guys? Do you have a better answer today than a lot of the fans and listeners have?
I mean, not really. I mean, you don't. I mean, honestly, you don't. I mean, I think I have a better answer, but not today than I did a couple of days ago. You know, it's one of those things where, you know, guys are frustrated. I mean, the team losing, they lost 3 games in a row. They were 3 horrible losses. You know, the team is supposed to be a contender for not just the Eastern Conference, but for the whole title. And they're struggling, and they're running out of time. So guys are getting frustrated. Guys don't really know their roles. I mean, there's a lot of things that's going on right now, and you know, we'll learn more. And then here's another thing: it's the trade deadline. Guys don't know if they're going to be here or not. So we'll learn more, you know, once everything is over with tomorrow night in regards to the game.
Yeah.
It could get worse.
Yeah,
but we'll learn more.
Well, it sounded like a lot of questions were pointed to both to Brett and the players. Are the players tuning the coach out? Brett said, go ask them, and I saw your video with Joel. He seemed to say the same thing he said the other night. No, we're the players. He can't make shots for us. Is that him just deflecting, or do you think that they truly are still tuned into the coach?
You know, I don't know. I mean, you know, the thing is they say it, but then you look at the body language, and again, like, it's bad losses. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. The body language has been bad before. And then they won a couple games and they turned it back around. So, you know, it's just one of those things where, you know, it was just a bad loss for everyone. Now, again, do they like their roles? No. You know, but it's just one of those things where, you know, you don't know. And then, again, here's honestly, if you ask Brett Brown if he lost the team, he's not going to come out and say, yeah, I lost the team. If you ask Joel Embiid in that setting, he's not going to say it either. You know, they're not going to be honest in those circumstances. But at the same time, you know, it is what it is, and that's what we got.
Sure is. Keith Pompey for the Inquirer. And let me ask you this then. How much Richardson's not going to play? Do you think his absence has contributed to the way they've played it all, or is that minor?
Well, when you factor in, let's take the Boston loss. You know, Boston was out their best player, Kemba Walker. They were without 2 rotation bigs. So I kind of think that Boston was a little bit weaker than the Sixers in regards to having people on the roster. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
And I do get that Richardson, you know, would help, but not in that scenario. And then when you go to like Atlanta, you would think that they wouldn't need him to beat the second worst team in the NBA. I mean, so, you know, that can be something that you can say, but at the same time, I think that they also, I think he's only played in 30-something. So, yeah, I mean, he would have helped, but at the same time, you should still be able to beat Atlanta. I mean, you should be able to beat Atlanta without Joel Embiid. You know, you should still be able to beat the Boston Celtics, a team that you were up 3-0 on in the series, without their all-star player and 2 rotation players. So, you know what I mean? I can't use that one as an excuse.
Keith, when you look at this locker room dynamic and the lack of leadership, one, who do you think is the leader and who needs to step up as the leader? And how can they fix this locker room dynamic with the most tenured guys being Ben Simmons and Embiid, and then Horford and Richardson and those guys being the new kids on the block?
Well, if you look at the leaders of the locker room, I always have to say that Tobias Harris and Al Horford are the leaders of the locker room, you know, in regards to getting guys together. You know, if you look at it, you know, in order for teams to basically prevail, the leaders of the locker room have to be the all-stars. They have to be the guys. You know what I mean? They have to be the ones who show up early, the ones who stay late, the ones who demand everything from everyone, and then people will follow suit. As much as Al Horford and Tobias Harris are, great guys and everything like that, they're, number 3 and number 4 or 4 or 5, depending on what Josh Richardson's doing. So you need these other 2 guys to become the leaders of the team. They're younger, but at the same time, they have to be, in addition to being the all-stars, they have to be the vocal leaders and the, lead by example type of guys in the locker room.
Keith, you follow this team every night. You're at every game essentially here. What's up with Embiid? Because I said it's like a mental thing, not just a physical thing. What do you see?
I mean, I see a guy who's frustrated. I see a guy who, let's face it. If you look at the way the team last year, you had him and Jimmy Butler doing the pick and roll, right? They did that. And then you had him and J.J. Redick doing a dribble hand together. And then you had another guy who basically created spacing. Right now, what you have is you have him and Al Horford and, Ben Simmons, who doesn't shoot the ball a lot. So you got 3 kind of like guys taking up the same spot. And what that does is that all constantly, sometimes triple. I just see a guy who, it's frustrating because, last year the team was, in my opinion, was fit better for him. Like he had guys who paired nicely with him. Right now you have guys who base well for Ben, but not necessarily Embiid. So I just see a guy frustrated, just because, things are harder for him right now.
So, Keith, there's spacing, there's coaching, there's bench depth, there's lack of three-point shooting. We talk about many different issues that at times plague this team that it makes me wonder.
Hello?
Makes me wonder if there's one thing that's, if you fix one thing, does it matter? Some people say, hey, just give them a guy who can put the ball on the floor. Somebody say, give him a three-point shooter, give him a better bench player. Is there one thing really make the difference in this team?
Not right now, I don't. Now, let's just say if they can go get a Derrick Rose, I think that he would help them from a bench standpoint, But the problem with the Sixers is right now is, you have a lot of guys who have max or close to max salaries, and then you have a lot of guys who have minimum salaries. And you have a couple draft picks that you had the last couple of years who are basically, active or they're like on the G League team. So their trade value is extremely low. So it's one of those things where, you could try to get a quick fix, but can you really afford it? Can you really go out there and get the player that you really want and that you need?
So does that mean you're at the point, if you don't feel like there's one thing that can really make an overwhelming difference on the team, are you at the point where you look at the Sixers and say they're just an okay team? They're a good team, not a great one, and you have less of an expectation for them now?
Well, the thing is, I wouldn't say they're just an okay team. I would call them an underachieving team. Because I still think that they have a lot of talent. It's just that it's not working out for them. That's what I would say for it. And, right now, the type of guys that they may be able to get, like, let's just say if they get Derrick Rose, that's great. But outside of that, the type of guys that I see them going after and getting, typically are going to be like low-level reserve specialists. So that's a guy that's not going to get you over the hump. But what you can look at it is if he has a couple years left, he can be someone that you can help, build him for next season. They're not going to come out and say we're giving up, but there comes a point in time when if your team is capable of winning a championship or not. And if they're not, you might as well try to get some reinforcements on the bench for next season.
Keith Pompey from the Inquirer. Now, Keith, you travel, you're everywhere. What do you make of the ability to ratchet it up and beat the Lakers and the Bucks and play really well against those teams and then do what they do against Boston and Miami. In other words, like, the ceiling seems to be so high and yet so inconsistent. So do you take anything from those wins against those high-profile teams or not really?
I do. And here's the thing. Like, a lot of it, when you look at it, you look at their shooting. Here's the one thing. Everybody keeps saying, like, I don't understand why the Sixers shoot worse on the road compared to at home. And it's simple to me. It's because, and here's my reasoning. Like, typically, we have all-stars. All-stars always come to play, home or away. And then you get some role players, especially role players off the bench. They tend to play better at home than they do on the road because everything is crowd is cheering for them. They get excited. It's this and that. But when you go on the road, it's different. You know what I mean? You don't get the excitement from the crowd. You don't get the lift, But I think that when you come to Philadelphia and you play at the Wells Fargo Center in front of a sellout crowd and you got people chanting, trust the process for Embiid, and everyone's going crazy for the other guys, they get a lift. But when they're on the road and you have 20,000 people telling you that you stink, is a completely different thing. And I think that has a lot to do with it. And the team is good in regards to talent, so they get amped up for those games. And you go on the road, everything is not like in Philadelphia either, So to me, that's the reasoning. And the team needs to correct that because to be a championship caliber team, you have to win on the road. But to me, that's the biggest reason because if you look at Furkan Korkmaz's shooting, or if you look at
Thibault,
Tobias Harris, guys like that, they struggle on the road.
Yeah, I was just looking at Thibault right now, Keith. I mean, he shoots 50% from three at home and 26% on the road, and then his normal field goal percentage is 46 at home to 33 on the road. And he's played a really prominent part of what this team is this year because he's been really good defensively. So I guess
exactly.
We talk about getting maybe that experienced guy, whether it's Derrick Rose or, we've talked about Darren Collison today just because he's on the street and available. Maybe that goes further than just one guy would normally can take you.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. You got to make sure it's the right guy. You have to make sure it's the right guy, and that's what you need. I mean, you need a veteran type of like alpha dog guy who's saying, "I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do." And again, it's nothing against Matisse and these type of guys, but apparently, I spoke to an executive a couple years ago about that. And he's the one who pointed it out to me. And I looked at him, I was like, wow, he's right. Like, the role players tend to play way better at home than they do on the road.
Keith, I want to ask you, there was an article in the New York papers about 2 weeks ago regarding ownership with the Devils. We know the Sixers ownership group is the same, and it suggested that they had a lot of meddling and to say. Is that something that you feel is going on with this team as to why they pulled the trigger on so many roster overhauls and trades? Does the ownership group kind of say, we got to do something? Did they push the pedal down on the gas pedal a little too fast sometimes?
I mean, I don't know if they pushed the gas pedal down a little bit too fast. I mean, I will say that they do have a hands-on ownership. I will say that. I mean, I think that, you can argue that some of the draft picks that they did, weren't exactly the best ones. They just weren't the best ones, and they just didn't work out. 3 years in a row they drafted a center. Now maybe there are some people who are going to argue like they got rid of Markelle Fultz too soon, but at the same time, Markelle Fultz wasn't really in the building. And it got to a point where he didn't want. So, you know what I mean? It's a tough one. But I will say that they are a hands-on ownership, and some people don't like it because of that. But, it's their team, and that's what they feel like they want to do.
Keith, at this point in the season, with the criticism at its highest, I think we would all agree on that, how confident are you that this team can flip the switch for the postseason, and that you still feel confident that they are built for the postseason? And throw Horford's value into this question as well, that the team and Horford can really show its value when it really matters.
I'm not in that. I'm confident that after they play, I'm confident that after the All-Star break that they're going to go on a run and they're going to move up the standings because of their schedule. But I'm not confident that this team will get out the second round. And then if they're like a 4th seed or a 5th seed or even a 3rd seed, it's still going to be tough for them. If you're a 4th seed, they may have a hard time getting out of the first round.
Yeah.
Just because, they're going to look better. Everyone's going to like the people are going to go back to saying how great they are and this and that. But we have to realize that they're going to be playing like the lesser teams in the league. And it's just like when they went on the road and they played the New York Knicks and they played the Brooklyn Nets. Everyone kept saying, they're back. And then they go in Toronto and get smacked. It's going to be one of those things. But I'm not confident that they can turn it around and play up.
All right, Keith Pompey, I got one question for you. I got West Virginia ranked 11th. All right? Bob Huggins' West Virginia team, how far are they going? That's the key.
Man, I see them losing in ranked 11. I see them losing in the first round of the NIT tournament.
All right, bud. I'll see you soon.
All right, my man. Thanks for having me on, y'all.
You got it. Keith Pompey, a fine Pitt alum.
No one wants to talk about that great Penn State basketball team yet.
No, they're 22nd.